last video, we talked about the origin of Egyptian civilization, Old Kingdom, and some part of Middle Kingdom. Now, let's just jump into the part of Middle Kingdom where the reign of Sosostris III starts. But first, if you are new here, welcome. This is Cultures Frost, where we decide to pack our bags to explore the world after looking into different engrossing cultures around the world. Sosostris or Sensoret III made important military achievements. He built forts and castles to secure the pyramids and Egypt. His statue is a full description of his power and divine status. His large ears depicts that he was aware of all plans and schemes of enemies. As the country prospered, trade flourished, resulting in many rich traders to come and see the development of Egypt. Among these traders were the Hyksos kings, who initially came for the trade but ruled Egypt from 1650 BCE to 1550 BCE. With Hyksos kings, Egypt entered its second dark age. Hyksos kings in the north made alliances with the Nubians in the south, and Egypt ended up stuck between two enemies. They invented new weapons like composite bows, and due to alliances with the Nubians, Hyksos kings brought some gold in Egypt too. Then 1380 BCE, Thebans, who were the more Egyptians with local god Amun, pushed the Hyksos back to Palestine. A new kingdom of Egypt started. Amenhotep III was the Theban leader to conquer Egypt. He built great large temples and temple complex where he could be worshipped later. While his mummified body was buried in Valley of Kings, a sacred place built to bury kings' mummified bodies with gold plating and golden mask. We studied in Amenhotep III period. Now the pharaohs were buried in deep chamber to avoid the past mishap incidents. Not only the afterlife mayors flourished, Amenhotep's marriage with Syrian princess and relations with neighboring countries increased political influence of Egypt. Regarding religion, Karnak Temple was continually booming as the largest religious temple of Egypt, with its priests as a rising part and powerful status. Even priests were so powerful that they could be appeared as the rivals of king. To keep a balance in their power, Amenhotep employed his own relatives in the temple to make them loyal. Priests of the Karnak temple had to keep them clean by removing hair of the whole body to let their body and soul purify in front of God. Amun was no more a local god, rather a state god, who made the river Nile flow, who caused the sunrise and agriculture flourish. Amun in the morning was cleaned, perfumed, dressed with the makeup, and was offered sacrifices, food, and many things. But all of this balance diminished as his successor Akhnam or Akhenaten took the throne in about 1352 BCE. He was not a diplomat like his father. He built his own temple and replaced many deities of Egypt with a single sun god. As a result, priests were not under his control. At his own temple, when priests objected, Akhenaten moved his temple to some other place, which resulted in the formation of a new city called Amarna. The only way to reach sun god was through Akhenaten, his wife, and co-ruler Nefertiti. After Akhenaten, his son became the next pharaoh of Egypt, who was going to be the most famous pharaoh in the future, Tutankhamun, who is famous for its golden mask, his tomb with fabulous treasures, and its coffin with gold. Here a thing to note, a recent study showed that about 80% of the treasures in Tutankhamun burial belong to someone else. These treasures may be from Akhenaten, Nefertiti, or some female. For example, there is a carving of sun god on the throne giving its blessing to the king, while the sun god temple and belief was by Akhenaten. And also it can be seen that there is some addition in its crown, which shows that this throne was basically designed for someone else, and later it was related to someone else. In the golden mask of Tutankhamun, there is a mark of ear piercing. Tutankhamun died at the age of 19, and at this age he was quite young to wear earrings, so it can be him to wear earrings. Moreover, researchers have explained that the gold on the mask and that on the coffin was different. So it can be depicted that the mask was reshaped to fit the Tutankhamun's mummy. It can be assumed that the priest at the premature death of Tutankhamun found an opportunity to get rid of unwanted past of Akhenaten and its sun god, and buried all of its belongings with it. After that, in 19th dynasty, tomb of King Seti I clearly shows that the polytheism and the Amun as a state god was back. Seti I restored the Egypt's god and made his connections with the past of ancient Egypt. He brought back the glory of Egypt. Ramses II, the next king famous for its Abu Simbel festival, took the throne. In his era, there were some conflicts, corruption, and bureaucracy started. And first labor strike took place in the world's history for not providing the laborers with the food they required or demanded. When Ramses II died, the highest-ranking priest of Karnak temple looted his tomb, and this looting carried on as the kings died and make their burial tombs. It shows that how much little belief they have on the afterlife at this stage, and how less sacred they think of the burial places. It is also understandable that how much power at this time the priest had, and now it is acceptable that how after some years priests ruled on the south. With the south ruled by the priest, we enter into the 22nd dynasty of ancient Egypt period, the period of invaders. Foreigners invade Egypt to conquer it, to absorb it, but it was Egypt who conquered them. Egypt, with its deep roots and rich culture, occupied the invaders. Those who separated themselves from its culture were expelled out. In 945 BCE, Libyans attacked Egypt and took part. They adopted many traditions of Egypt to look forwards, but they were basically interested in gold, power, and wealth of God. So they couldn't be ruled for a long time. In 8th century BCE, 747 BCE, Kushites, the rulers of Nubia, the southern neighbor of Egypt, attacked and conquered Egypt. Back in times, due to different wars between Egyptians and its southern neighbors, they had adopted many beliefs of Egypt. They rebuilt and restored the ancient Egypt, founding the 25th dynasty. In 674 BCE, Assyrians invaded Egypt, and they had little to no interest in Egyptian civilization, their beliefs, architecture, or culture. They were just here for expansion of their territory and wealth, and they did that by violence. After ruling for 20 years, they returned to east and sent rulers from Delta city of Sais in north rose and took control of Egypt. Now Egypt was back in the hands of native Egyptians. In this period, not only the humans but animals were also mummified, and animals after mummifying were sometimes served as sacrifices to temples. Then came the Persian Empire in 525 BCE. Like the Assyrians, they were the expansionists, and for the next 200 years they made Egyptians just tax-paying servants. At this age, Egyptians needed some savior, and then the savior came. Alexander the Great invaded Egypt in 332 BCE and made its name written not only in the pages of world history but also on the Egypt's walls. He was aware of the fact that to conquer Egypt he had to look Egyptian. He showed offerings to the Egyptians' god, and that's the reason he was treated as a traditional pharaoh in Egypt. He stayed in Egypt for about 6 months, but made a new city called Alexandria, which remained the most famous and developed city for years and centuries. Then came the Ptolemy dynasty. Ptolemy I was the fellow of Alexander. After the Alexander, he took control of Egypt. They were Greeks, so not only they introduced Greek literature, culture, wealth, and ideologies, but also they absorbed many Egyptian beliefs. In Ptolemy dynasty, temples were built, rebuilt, and restored, and many scholarships, royal, and other libraries were introduced. By the end of 3rd century BCE, Egypt entered another period of civil war. As a center of developments and knowledge was Alexandria, southern part rebelled, resulting in a second half of Ptolemy dynasty led by corruption and civil wars. This chaos caused the Roman emperors to invade Egypt. For 20 years, Cleopatra stood in the path of Rome to conquer Egypt. Then on August 30 BCE, Cleopatra succeeded, resulting Egypt in the hands of Romans. Ancient Egypt's cultural glory began to fade away at this stage, with many of its temples closed, destroyed, or just left away. Ancient Egypt is no more the ancient Egypt. Romans ruled Egypt for about 600 years, and this period caused Christianity as a religion to enter into the Egypt. Then in 640 AD, that is 6th century, Arabs entered introducing Islam. Arabs ruled Egypt for about 200 years. Some important events are Umayyad Caliphate, Abbasid rule, Ptolemaic dynasty, Mamluk dynasty, and Mongols. Then Ottoman Empire and Napoleon attacks, followed by the local governor Muhammad Ali rule, which ended up under British colonies, independence of Egypt in 1922, and now we have the modern day Egypt, which in past was a sign of wealth, glory, culture, with its vast territory including the modern day Sudan, Syria, Cyprus, African countries, Palestine, and much more. That was the history part. And if you have developed the craze to know about the festivals of modern day Egypt, jump into the article of culturesfrost.blogspot.com. Link is in the description below. Stay tuned for the next video.